Welcome everyone at the webinar titled Cultural Differences and the Way We Approach Problems. I'm Christian Szerencsés, the moderator of today's event. I would like to draw your attention to the possibility of asking questions. They will be discussed at the end of the presentation during the Q&A session. Now let me say a few words about our speaker today, Oliver Koppány. He's a foreign legal counsel at the US Attorneys at Law. He's admitted to the bar in both Hungary and also in the US. His practice focuses on cross-border legal issues, particularly in the fields of pharma, startups, commerce, and anti-corruption compliance. And Oliver, please take the floor.
Hello. So everyone can hear me. I think everyone can see me. I think let's. I don't know how interactive, Christian. How interactive can this be? Not really, right? I mean, will you have to raise your hand to ask questions, or can this be more interactive?
No, I mean, I'm gonna see the questions in writing.
Okay.
So and then.
Okay. So let's start a little bit about me, my background, and today what I'm going to talk about. So I moved back to Budapest during COVID in 2019, and I started working here. I am admitted as a foreign legal advisor to the Hungarian Bar Association, but I am, in essence, I'm a U.S. attorney. All my clients are based in the U.S. All my work is in the U.S. And sometimes I do have a lot of work here where it coincides. These two things coincide. What I want to talk today about really is the differences that I noticed between our two cultures, and I want to talk more about what is better and how we can mesh our two cultures. And the reason I like this topic, and the reason I want to talk about it, is because, in essence, if you want to be an international lawyer, which I think most of you probably do, or you want to practice in some international space, I think understanding the different cultures, understanding how to interact with different countries, with different backgrounds, with different people, I think it's a fundamental key to how far you can take it in this field. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. I started my background working at Wilkie Farr & Gallagher, which is a Washington, D.C. based firm. I think now they have about 1,500 lawyers, 1,500 lawyers, which is quite a lot, I think, by Hungarian standards. It's quite an enormous firm. Then I moved back to Budapest. I worked at a law firm called KMP Law. I was there for about 5 years, and then I made the switch. Some of the key clients and work that I worked on. Also, here's cultural difference. By Hungarian bar standards, you're not supposed to talk about your clients. In the US, you're actually encouraged to talk about your clients, and there's nothing that restricts you from sharing who your clients are and the work you've really done for them. While it's ongoing, you probably shouldn't, but once the work is already completed or the matters are done, then absolutely you can. So I worked for Bloomberg LP, which is a trading system, and this was during sanctions advising time. So when originally Obama sanctioned Russia, I started working for Bloomberg and Exxon at Wilkie, primarily on questions on how they deal with sanctions, as they had a lot of Russian assets and they did a lot of work in Russia. And so I did that for multiple years. And then I transitioned into doing more defense work. So I do a lot of work for Raytheon, RTX Systems, Northrop Grumman, and a lot of PMCs, so small PMCs. So PMCs are private military contractors. What I do now in my day-to-day is I'm the general counsel of a company called 13 Lines. This is a private military contractor, and they're based in New York. So every month I go to New York, which is, at first it's fun, but then it's a little too much flying. So every month I'm in New York for about a week or two. And then in Hungary, I serve as a foreign legal advisor with Jargon. And so I kind of go between these two roles. And so let's start kind of from the very basics of what I was told. And I think, oh, this is so hard because I don't get to interact with you guys. I'm sorry, Christian. I want to interact a little bit more. But so if you guys have any questions or want to participate anyway, please let me know. But this is tough like this. I'm just presenting. I don't love lecturing. So here's what I can say. I think that what I've noticed since I've come to Hungary, culturally, one of the main differences that I saw is that, in general, Hungarian young lawyers, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, you are all terrible at networking, just terrible at it. And the reason I say that is because I have probably interacted since I've been here with 300 to 350 students. I want to say in general, through Ars Boni, I taught at Bibo, I did all sorts of things. So far, out of all those students that I've met with, one of them reached out to me to help with their resume. So that's it. So in the US, you're sort of taught from a young age that, this either you network or you don't work. And this is really like kind of words to live by. And so I encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn after this. My email is public. Send me an email. When you want to network, this is one of those things. You don't have to have an agenda. I maybe just have good advice for you. But now that I've been practicing for 10 plus years, it's very interesting because I find myself, people that I had coffee with in college, people that I met and went to dinner with, people that I networked with, I now work with them. And I say, oh, who's that guy I once met with coffee? He can help me with this. So it's not always about how you can necessarily advance your own career, but how you can cooperate with people later on in your career. So it's never too early to start networking. And I think that networking leads to this fundamental cultural difference, which is when I first went to my boss at Wilkie, I was very fresh. US law firms, as you all may know, are not necessarily known for their friendly atmosphere. And so he sat me down and he said, listen, Oliver, I want to tell you 3 things that you have to do, but if you only can do one of them, that's okay. So I said, all right, Martin, what is it? He said, you can either be the best writer. It's like, that's not you. You're not the best writer. I said, okay, that's off. He said, you can be the best student. You could have the top grades and the top 10 from one of the top 10 law schools. And, then you can just kind of just coast. He said, you don't have the best grades. So I said, okay. He said, or you can bring in business. And if you can bring in business, he said, no one cares about anything that you do. Just keep generating business. And so these are sort of words to live by. And this is what's effectively told to you day one, right? Where if law firms are a business, so you can be a really good lawyer, but if you're not good at networking, if you're not good at generating business, you have a very distinct ceiling that you can get to. And so culturally, I find that, associates in Hungary, you're sort of taught that, hey, you're an associate now for 3 years, and you're going to be a lawyer. And for those 3 years, you're just head down, you're working. What I would suggest to you is during those 3 years, take some time to really spend time talking to senior attorneys, talking to people that you sort of think might be a good role model for you or a good influence on you, and learn how they did it. Meet their network, meet their people, grow your network, because it's the only way that you can then grow your business. So I totally understand, I met someone who said, I met someone who's one of my associates. He said, listen, I just want to do GDPR work. I want to be the best in the world at GDPR. And I said, that's great. But if for 3 years, all you're doing is studying the GDPR, there's going to be someone that's studying it, but they're also networking and meeting all of your potential clients. And so he's going to be 2 steps ahead of you when it comes to building out their business. So I say this again as a difference. And I also say this as you have my LinkedIn, you have my availability. Send me an email. My office is at Mom Park. I'm happy to meet anyone for coffee. I'm happy to talk about anything. I am a complete open book. So if this webinar was more interactive, you could ask me anything, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. So let's see. With some of the academic differences, and this is maybe where I kind of am, and I'm happy to say that I could be wrong about why you're instilled that this business first mentality is so important, is that for us, I went to undergrad for 4 years, and then I started working, and then I was in law school, but I was working through law school. And so for me to go through my undergrad and law school, it's about 7 years. And so I know that here you have your kind of undergrad, then you have your practice, and then you have your bar exam. So I think that the fundamental difference that I find, and this is my just again my hands-on 2 cents experience, working with some lawyers that are here is the US system really teaches you to problem solve, and it's based on case law. So US law is based on case law, which means that you read existing cases and rulings, right, by judges, and that's what is fundamentally forms your interpretation and legal analysis and understanding. And then you have to learn how to twist the cases. You have to learn, okay, how can I argue that this case is good for side A versus how it's good for side B? And this is what you learn in the system. My understanding, again, I didn't go through Hungarian law school, so I could be very wrong. And if I'm wrong, tell me, write me an email, say, Oliver, you're completely wrong, and I'm happy to discuss it with you. We learn how, I think, much more how to problem solve. It's not just learning the text of the law, we learn how to apply it. This, I think, is a fundamental difference between the US and the Hungarian system, because I think in the Hungarian system, you more learn to apply it once you start working. So once you're a junior associate or an associate, you start to learn how this all works and how it all fits together. And then our testing and bar examination is also different. So from my understanding, in Hungary, you have a lot of felelés, which is, you sort of have these questions and you speak, right? That to me is a very foreign concept. For us, our exams are, it would usually be a 4-hour exam. So just as an example, you would have one, like, let's say you have your contracts class. Your test question would be 1 page, and it would just be a problem. It would be, XYZ purchased eggs. The eggs were priced like this. The eggs dropped. One of the eggs broke. Someone slipped on the eggs, and this would be 1 page. And then you have 4 hours to identify all the problems. And from memory, then recite all the cases that you read and apply them to that fact pattern. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a phenomenally different testing system that we have. And then our bar examination, again, it's also written, right? So it's a 2-day exam. It's 200 multiple choice questions on the first day, 100 break 100, and then it's 6 essay questions. So it's 3 break 3, and it's a 12-hour exam. And so I think that this is not a good example of one of the strong suits of the US system. I don't think it's a great system. But it's again, it summarizes that really these tests are about applying the law. They're not about necessarily reciting it. They're about your understanding and how to use it. Next, I want to tell you guys a little bit about how our classrooms look. And again, this is, I think, a big difference, because I think similar to the way I'm doing now, Hungarian law schools are primarily lecture-based. I am not a good lecturer, and I don't love lecturing. So I really enjoyed the Socratic method. And to show you what the Socratic method is, I have a phenomenal video. There's a movie called The Paper Chase. And if you have time to watch it, as any young lawyers, I highly recommend you watch it. I think it's from 1971. But it's like kind of the fundamental movie for young lawyers. And so it's called The Paper Chase. One of the first scenes in that movie is the demonstration of how the Socratic method works. So I'm going to play that for you in a second. I think that the case is also a very interesting case, so I'm happy to talk about it. But let me first go on and show you this video. Let me see if I can do this. Christian, tell me if this will work. Okay.
I hope.
Does this work? Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear it? Hold on. Can you hear it?
No.
No. Okay. That's not great. No? Nothing?
No.
Oh, geez. Oh, Christian, can I send this to you? Can you try to play it?
Yeah, we can try.
Okay, hold on. Let me put it in the chat.
Okay.
There we go. And then I will go back to my other screen.
Okay.
No. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen.
It's just a great example of what the Socratic method is. So I'd love to be able to show it to you guys.
Now, do you see the screen?
I do.
Okay, so let's try.
Let's see if we have sound.
Do you hear it?
No.
No. Okay, then. It doesn't work.
Oh, bummer. Okay. All right. So I'll talk through it. So this will, I put it in the chat. Maybe you guys can watch it. I think it's a really interesting little video, and it shows you that essentially how this works in US law schools. And again, I don't know how it works in Hungarian law schools. So if you want to meet for coffee and tell me how it works, I'd love to do that. So you have about 100 people per class, and you walk in and you sit down, and you basically, you sign where you're sitting. So you get a sign-in sheet. You sign, okay, Oliver sitting in the top row, in this chair, etc. And that's your first day. And then your professor will get that paper, and then every day you're going to be assigned quite a bit of reading. So sometimes it's 100 pages, sometimes it's 20 pages, sometimes it's 200 pages of reading, and it's always cases, multiple cases. So in this case, when you go to your first contracts law case in the US and you sit down, the very first case that every contracts law professor will have you read is called Hawkins versus McGee. And if you're in front of your computers, Google it, look it up. Phenomenal piece of reading. It's only 2 pages. But what this does is it establishes that there was a doctor, there was who's the defendant, there was a plaintiff, and there was a medical procedure gone wrong, and someone had to make the person whole. I don't really want to go through it because without seeing the video, I can't talk to you guys about it. But again, I linked it. Please watch it, and please watch the paper chase. It will tell you exactly how this looks in kind of practice. So I do recommend you watch it. I know it's old, 1971, but it's still a great movie. And so this will demonstrate to you how our law school classes look on a daily basis. It's not, just the first day. Every day is like that. You read, you come in. All right, Oliver, give me the facts of the case. Oliver, give me the ruling. Oliver, give me the holding of the case. And if you don't do it, that's your grade, right? So your grade is based on how well you read your homework. And if they don't call on you, well, then you're just really lucky. But if they do and you didn't read, well, then you're out of luck, right? So, okay, let's go on. So and I think now we have some similarities, right? So when you guys are all looking at jobs, you have options. You have big firms, you have international firms, you have small firms, you have your solo practitioners, and you have to decide what fits you and what you want to do. In the US, one of the things that I really did enjoy is that it's very transparent, right? From every law school class, about 10% of your law school will go into big law. And that's the hard one to get into. And the reason it's hard is that it's a very rigorous program. You work about 20 hours a day for multiple years on end. Your life, it doesn't exist. So work-life balance, just forget about it. But you also, your compensation is quite high in comparison. And so let me see, where's my next slide? Hold on. So I'll show you. So this is a public chart. This is not a secret. And again, I say this because I wish the Hungarian system was much more open like this. So when you look at these numbers, this is current for year 2025. So what is this, right? So these are just big numbers on a screen. So the US has established something called the Cravath Scale. And there's a law firm called Cravath, Swain and Moore. And they basically published all the salaries for their first year associates in the 70s, I think. And ever since then, every single law firm, when one of them raises, the other one raises to match it. So that means that when you're a student, when you're graduating law school and you're looking at these big law jobs, which are really hard to get, you know that you don't really care which law firm you can go to. You want to go to big law, and you know that your salary will be exactly the same across the board, no matter where you go. And now, important to note that these are only in New York and in DC. But again, this is not a secret, and everyone knows this, right? So if you are a fresh law school graduate, you are going to make $225,000. and you are going to get a $20,000 bonus. And these do look like they are big numbers, which I can appreciate and accept. But again, not secret. Everyone knows this. But the trade-off, right? The trade-off that you have to make to succeed in this career is I was just telling Benedict before we got on this call. So I had 3 friends that I worked with who committed suicide in the first 2 years of my work, because they just couldn't, you just can't handle it mentally. They just collapsed, right? 20-hour days. And so if you want to do the math, my billing requirement was I had to bill 33,500 hours a year in order to actually be paid my salary, right? So to meet your salary, you have to meet your billing requirement. And that's, a lot of people don't talk about that. So if someone can do the math, but I think it works out to like 9 hours every single day, 365 days a year. There's no off days, there's no breaks, and that's billed time. So that's not you sit in front of a computer for 9 hours every day just checking emails. That's actual billable work, right? But what we can take away from this is I hope that one day, and I tried to take steps towards this once, the Hungarian system will be more transparent. I think that, to me, and I've always felt this way, in Hungarian associates that I've had, first-year associates, I don't see them as someone that I want to, that I need to teach and develop. I saw them as my equals. I saw them as my colleagues and people that are a value add. And so their compensation should be, matching that. And I think, unfortunately, we are in a system here where a lot of attorneys see a young associate as someone that, oh, you're lucky to be working for me. I see it the opposite way. I see it as I'm lucky that you're wanting to work with me and that, I get to learn from you, because irrespective of whether you're experienced in law or not, I always think that your life experience is most likely different than mine, and your approach to problems is different, hence the cultural differences. And so I think that I think it would be great to see this change. So why did I choose this route? Honestly, it's the experience, it's the mentorship, it's the status, the recognition, and really, everyone says, and I agree with this, it was the hardest period of my life, but what I was able to learn was worth it. And my approach to problems, the network that I created from this organization, the people that I met, was it worth losing? I don't want to say losing, but spending so much of my life effectively, indoors, not seeing sunlight for years, literally, was it worth it? I don't know. I think now, in retrospect, I have a son. I'm able to be outside more. I'm able to have my own schedule, and I would say yes, it's worth it, but it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not a healthy thing to do. And so, one of the things that I always reflect on is keep in mind this U.S. mentality to work, right? So, I think in Hungary you have, by law, you have days off you must take, you have time off you must take. So I had 2 weeks of time off a year. 5 days of that was sick leave, and 5 days of that was vacation. I never used either. And to give you an example, I had a surgical procedure on my knee. I used to play hockey. And so this was after a couple months. I had to go to the hospital. I was getting the surgical procedure, and I take my phone out and I said, I'm currently out of the office for the next 1 hour and 30 minutes. So if I don't see your email, I'm really sorry. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So I set my out of office. Within about 3 minutes, I get an email from my boss. He immediately calls me. He said, what's wrong with you? I said, what do you mean? He said, why do you have an out of office? And I said, well, I can't. I checked my phone. He's like, an out of office is a for sale sign for your clients. So take it down right now. And he's like, just keep checking your phone. So I said, okay, all right. So that's how it is. That's what I will say. He used much more harsh language than that when we had this discussion. Language I don't want to use right now, but anyway, you get the picture. And so, what is it that you really learned, though, and what is it that I think that I was able to gain from this? So, I think that one of the things you learn very quickly, and one of the things that I would suggest for all of you to focus on as you go through your careers and as you build a career, and from the first day you step foot into a law firm, when you are asked to do something for a client, right? When hey, can you prepare a response? Hey, can you draft a memo to this client about this problem or anything? I always want you to ask yourself, who is our client, right? Who is the client that I'm working for? And I don't mean, is it ExxonMobil? Is it Bloomberg? I mean, who really is asking you the question? Is it the general counsel of the company? Because I currently work with about 13 different law firms around the world as a general counsel. And when I'm asking a question, I expect the answer to be very different. So I want, I'm a lawyer. If you answer a lawyer, you should write a lawyerly response, but not legalese, right? So it's not overly complex, but I will be looking for different things than if someone in my HR department sends you a question, right? So if someone in my human resources section sends you a question and says, hey, can you answer this, right? Your client is still the same company, but your client that you're writing to is now in HR. So you have to adjust your tone. You don't want to copy paste from, a legal textbook. You want to be able to help them understand and resolve their problem in a way that they can understand it well, right? So your job, and I think, again, this is a big thing. And in Hungary, I always thought that, legal writing was very complex in a way. And our job was always to make the writing that we do as simple as possible. We don't, if I used words like shall, right? So I'm sure many of you have used the word shall. I've had things thrown at me for using the word shall in documents, right? So it's just not. What does shall mean? You must, right? You have to. So why are we using these fancy words that really don't mean anything and can be used by simpler words? So I know that it will depend on where you all work, but keep in mind that your job is just that, to help clients solve problems. And you want to do it, I think, in as simple of a way as possible. And that's not easy. It's not easy to simplify the law. It's not easy to make it understandable for anyone. But I always thought that that's my job, that I have to make everyone understand the things that I understand or understood through, a career of learning it. All right, I have another video. I don't know if this one will play though. Will you hear, Christian, do you hear the sound? No?
No.
Oh my gosh. Oh no. All right. Well, do you guys watch, if you guys watch Suits, you might recognize this scene. This is, I didn't like Suits very much because it's not that much like real life. But if you do watch Suits, here's some fun facts for you. The law firm that Suits is based on is actually a real law firm. It's in New York City. It's called Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen and Katz. Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen and Katz is by US standards, a very small law firm. They have about 200 attorneys, but they have the highest profit per equity partner of any law firm in the world. So I think it's over $13 million per partner is their revenues. So they are the most profitable law firm in the world by size. And so that's what Suits was based on. And this scene is a great scene. Lewis calls Simon into his office and says, hey, what is this word here? And he says, shall. And then Lewis says, why? He basically yells at Simon and tells him, look, we don't use that word. We use must, we use have to, but we do not use words like shall because they don't really mean anything. So anyway, I'll move on. That's kind of where my presentation ends. I'd love to do Q&A, and I don't know if it can be interactive or not, Christian, or how interactive it can be. I don't know if I can go into any question anyone has. I'm happy to answer. I am a complete open book, so please ask away.
Yeah. Well, I can read the questions. That's the most interactive that we can go.
That's fantastic. All right. Do we have any questions or no?
We are receiving some, so I'm going to ask them. So one question would be, how do you actually bring in business? So let's say, is there a difference in that regard between the US and Hungary?
I think, I don't, this is such a good question, actually. And I'll tell you let me tell you first an example of it. I think that bringing in business, developing business is all about your ability to network and problem solve and your will, your want, right, to do it. And so here's an example. So the general counsel of this company, Raytheon, he sits in Texas. He lives in Texas. They reside in Texas. For many years, probably 5 years, I wanted to do work for this company. And so every time there was a conference where he was, I would buy a ticket, I would go there, I would just to for him to see me. And then, I would just say, hey, I'm here, how are you? Oh yeah, I'm just in the neighborhood. I wasn't in the neighborhood, I flew 6 hours to go there. And then one day he sends me an email. It's like 5 in the morning. I get an email, and this is another difference culturally. I'll check my email 24 hours a day. So for better or worse, right? It's a horrible habit, but I'll wake up in the middle of the night, go through my emails. Anyway, don't do that. Not healthy. So anyway, Raytheon's general counsel sends me an email, 5 in the morning. He says, Oliver, he says, meet me today in London. Now, London is not like a small place. So I was like, okay. So anyway, I go to the airport. I get on a flight. I go to London. Send him an email. Hey, I'm here. Said, all right, come meet me at this hotel. Okay. So I go to the hotel and I'm sitting in the lobby. This guy comes down, cowboy boots, big cowboy hat. He's a serious guy, but it's a little stands out a little bit in London. And he walks over to me and says, "All right, let's go grab a beer." This is like at 11 a.m. by the way now. And so I said, "Okay." And so I said, "Steve, what am I doing here? We're sitting at this bar at 11 a.m." I said, "Why am I here?" And he said, Oliver, he says, "I have a very strong rule." He says, "I don't do business with anyone that I haven't had a beer with." So I said, "All right." I said, "So, okay." So I was like, "This is it. We're just having the beer." He's like, "Yep." He's like, "My assistant will send you the paperwork." He's like, "And we'll get it squared away." And then I flew back to Budapest, and that was it. But the point is that you don't know where these things come from. You just, you sort of have to decide who you want to do work for, what are the companies you want to be with, and then put all your effort into targeting those companies. Who in my friend network knows this person? Who went to their school? What talking points do I have? I think there's no right or wrong way to do this. You have to balance this, not too pushy. And so the way I've always done this, and something that I find very important, is to bring in business, you have to give business, right? So what is a problem that you can solve for your client? Or what is something that you can do for you to bring value to them? And I'll give you another example. So I represented this company that made protective clothing for manufacturing plants. And so I knew someone at Audi. I didn't do work for Audi, by the way, but I knew someone that was in a leadership position there. And so this company that made the protective clothing was, pitting law firms against each other. And so I wrote to them and I said, "Listen, if I get you business," I said, "will you give me yours?" And they said, "Absolutely." So I called someone at Audi. I said, "Hey, listen, I want to pitch you this protective clothing business." I said, "They're going to come to Hungary. It's going to be great. They're Swedish. It'll be fantastic." So he says, "Okay, there's no problem." He said, "But for us, mostly it's about price." So I called back the guys in Sweden and I said, "Look, it's mostly a price question. Are you willing to work with me and, give them a good price?" They said, "Yeah, absolutely." So anyway, long story short, they now supply Audi with protective clothing. And so I was able to bring value to them, right? So I figured out that what they want is they want business in Hungary. And so I could help them through my existing network. I realize I'm sort of going in circles with this, but I hope you see the point that you just have to keep pushing, and you have to see what motivates people. You have to solve their problems. And the most important thing is you have to bring value to them. And you do that through networking. So if you network, you build your circle, believe me, you can start to figure out how puzzle pieces fit together and what problems you can solve.
And what do you think about the role of online marketing? So, as I see, you focus on rather personal engagement. Has it ever occurred with you that someone just wrote you an email using the form on your website that, yeah, I want to do a 40 million transaction, and would you be my attorney?
It's a good question. Hold on. No. So to answer your question, no, that's never happened. What has happened is I've gotten an email out of the blue that says, hey, I know someone that knows you, so I want you to handle this. But out of the blue, no past references to me, no prior meetings, nothing. No, that's never happened. And so you're absolutely right that to me it's all personal. And so I spend a lot of time building out my network. I think that's, again, I'm not the best writer. I'm not the best student. I'm far and away not the smartest person, or actually I'm not very smart at all. The only thing that I can do really well is I can connect puzzle pieces, and I can solve problems for people using all the other people that I know. And sometimes, you don't even know if you have a problem. And that's where, when we talk about how you develop your business, I have an IT company in Hungary that I'm now starting to do more and more work for. And I approached them and I said, hey, do you want to do business in the US? I said, I think I could help you with that. I said, I can introduce you to someone that might be a potential buyer. They're looking to switch their IT company. I said, come to New York, let's do a meeting. So it's that for me is it's always about problem solving. It's always about bringing value to the client.
I see. There's another question. I'm going to read it. Which way can a junior associate develop his or her network or connections? Because a lot of them needs to work between 12 and 14 hours daily.
Yeah. So to me, and again, this isn't healthy, right? I did about 20-hour days most of the time. So I would go home around 1 a.m, and then I would be back in the office by 5, 6 a.m. So you have to find time, and I know you have a family, you might have a significant other. Look for opportunities to get out of the office. Look for opportunities to meet people and get out of your comfort zone, because your comfort zone when you're a junior associate is going to be other junior associates. And so, always try to go out with other people and get into their network. And so in some senses, I would always invite my associates. I would say, hey, listen, I'm going to a conference. Do you want to come with me? Hey, I'm going to, and again, this is sort of this cultural difference. The first time I was asked by my partner, hey, do you want to go to this conference in Germany? I was like, yeah, 100% right now, I'm ready to go. There's been multiple times when I've asked associates that were me, hey, do you want to come to New York? I have a meeting, you'd be great. And they're like, I don't know. It's kind of far, So, and I can't tell you how just frustrated that made me. But look for opportunities and work-life balance. I think I'm so happy that Hungary has work-life balance and that you have rights. And 12 to 14-hour days, I understand it seems long, but it's really, there is more hours in the day, and how you utilize those hours to meet people, to network, and to get out of your comfort zone. So don't go with your law school friends out to grab beers. Try to go to an event hosted by Arsboni, an event hosted by Forbes. There's so many events that you can go to in this city. Just go meet people. Hey, I'm this, I'm that, or find someone that you want to work with. Find the partner or attorney that you want to work with and say, look, I really want to go with you to these things. I want to meet people. I want to learn your strategies. And I think most people will be happy to do that, right? You just need an attorney who views the junior associate as really someone that is an asset and not someone that has the privilege of being taught by them. So when you're interviewing, right, for your positions, those are things you want to see. Am I treated here like a junior associate? Or am I going to be treated here like someone who's just, I should feel privileged to be here? That's not the place you want to go.
So I sense that you're a little bit critical towards big law, especially the US form. So I would ask that if you could start over, would you do everything in the same way? Or let's say you would choose a boutique law firm instead of big law?
No, if I could start everything over, I wouldn't be a lawyer. So I am critical. I'm critical, but I'll tell you why. And this is, I I think that, again, sorry, I like telling through stories. So I'll tell you this. My like second day in Hungary, I walk into one of the associates' office. His name was Balázs, and it's 6 o'clock, right? For me, I'm just sort of starting my day 6 o'clock, and he's going home. And I said, oh, okay. And I grabbed his work phone. He left his work phone on the table, and I said, Balázs, do you want to take the work phone? And he said, why would I take the work phone? I said, well, so that if I need to ask you something. He's like, no, it's 6 o'clock. He's like, my work is over, so you don't need to reach me. And I was like, oh, I was like, okay. So, and at that point, I wasn't really. I was sort of like, okay, well, this is very strange, but again, I understood the cultural difference, and I said, you know what? I think that's great that he can go home and just forget about work, and it's a much healthier way to grow. And I think that would I do it all over again? I think that what I learned was invaluable. Now knowing what I know, I don't think I could do it again. I don't think like once you've sort of like gone through something that was really difficult, it's really hard to say, oh, I would do that again. Um, and so if I have to go back, I don't know. I probably would choose a different career, to be honest with you. Uh, so yeah, you're right. But you're right. I am critical of it
I
because
see, I see.
because I know how unhealthy it is. I've lost friends to this career, and I know how it treats people. It's like a human, it just churns out, you know, billing and paperwork, and it's not a healthy thing, right? So yeah.
Okay, okay. We have another question. Um, First of all, thank you for all the advices you already shared. They're not taught in courses. Question: besides networking, what are firms looking for in a candidate? For example, soft skills or law-related skills? Of course, depends on the size, field, but anyhow, I think in Hungarian mentality, you have to have a strong education background or something plus to bring on board that can affirm a position you get by networking. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah, so I think my advice is so one-sided. And so please understand my advice is one-sided, and it really is, because I am speaking from my mindset. My mindset is very different. And so when I interview someone, I look for a very different thing than, for example, our managing partner, Polly, would look for, right? I think that in order to really, that he probably looks for a different skill set. He wants you to have the best grades. He wants you to have great answers to whatever the exams. He wants you to, for me, I look for someone that, and so here's how I would look for associates. And again, I don't think this is the best way. I don't think this is just my way. And so if you were at an interview with me, I would envision you beside me at a negotiation, right? Or a contract dispute or something. And I want to know how you would act in that situation, because I think that, the fact that you're already at the interview means you've already passed the initial screening. You have good grades, you went to a good school, you did all the right things. And so at that point, I become more concerned about how you're going to do at, because that means that you're going to be a good partner, right? And if you're a good partner, I want to bring you networking. I want to introduce you to my circle. I want you to develop. I want you to grow. And I think that any associate that worked with me, they might say that I could be kind of a pain in the ass, but that I was fair and gave them all the opportunities they asked for. I think that would be the review for me. So I think pain in the ass or hard ass, but when I ask for opportunities, introductions to network, interactions with clients, I give that to my associates from day one, right? So it's not like, okay, you have to practice, you have to, no, day one, listen, you're here, this is the client introduction, there you go, you're off to the races. And so again, what I look for is probably very different than someone else, so I can only give you my perspective. But for me, I'm looking for that person that I envision as a partner, and so like a who's going to be next to me for the next 3 or 4 years. And so I think that's quite an important role.
So I see now we talk hiring practices. So for you, how important it is to have some kind of foreign experience, let's say an LLM, work experience abroad, or an Erasmus?
It's a good question. Not really. No, not really. To me, it's not important. Like, I think that there's a lot of people who may not have the financial opportunities to go abroad, to do something abroad. So I wouldn't value someone who did as you know a higher above them, right? I think that again, you can be what am I looking for? A good grasp on the English language. Obviously, you have to have that. And then you have to be open to learning these cultures, and you have to be able to adapt to dealing with me. To be honest, I think that's a difficult task in itself. And so if you went abroad, I think that's great. But I personally couldn't rank someone that, you know, went abroad and did something differently than someone that maybe didn't have that opportunity. Because again, the person that didn't have the opportunity, they might be just as hungry to learn. And if they're willing to deal with the way I operate and the way my brain works, then really you've already met kind of the hurdle right there, right? Because I personally am definitely not for everyone. And I know that. And so that whether you've traveled abroad or not, just have a good grasp of this language and be a good sidekick, right? I need that's what I need.
Okay. See. So another question regarding pro bono. So let's say in the suits, Harvey Specter is running away from doing pro bono,
Yeah.
but I guess in the US it may be
Oh.
well more widespread that companies engage in such activities. In Hungary, I believe it's not the situation. What are your takeaways on that?
So here, it's a good question on pro bono. So I've had a lot of clients in my life. I've had a lot of very high paying clients. I've done a lot of difficult work. The most difficult clients that I've ever had in my life are pro bono clients. And so I love doing pro bono work, but it's the most time consuming because you have to temper expectations. You have to spend so much time with the client. And even if you get exactly what the client wants, because there's no transaction, there's no value on what you've done. You know, a lot of times I felt like I was so uh, you know, I achieved everything the client wanted. I've done child custody cases. I've done pro bono cases in the US, you know, getting people off of death row. And I didn't even get so and again, maybe my mindset is wrong, but I didn't even get so much as a hey, thanks. You know, thanks for doing that. And and I think that's really hard about pro bono because it's just you put your heart and soul into it, and the cases are generally a little bit more sensitive. And then, you know, a lot of times you're actually blamed for things, and so it's hard. But at the same time, I do a lot of pro bono. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations in Hungary that I support, not just with pro bono work, but also financially. And so I continue to do it, and I've now learned how to do pro bono better, right? So making sure that when I do pro bono work, I lay out expectations, I tell them how it's going to go, I manage it the whole way, but it's still a lot of time. But I think irrespective of whether you get a thanks or not or anything else, it is very rewarding. But again, I will say that from Harvey's perspective, they are the most time consuming cases.
Okay, and in practice, do they count in the billables of the attorney
Yes,
who's
yes,
working on?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
yes, yes. So if you take on pro bono cases as an associate or even as a partner, sometimes that does count toward your billable requirement. So it's sort of part of the reason why there's no excuse ever to not meet your billables, because there's always pro bono cases that you could take on.
I see. See, and also you mentioned partners, so that's a way how this business works that after a while after you are a senior associate, you become, let's say, a partner, or that's the goal. But nowadays, I see that a lot of people, they rather choose to be a counsel so that they don't want to engage in business searching practices. What are your takeaways on that? Did you see the same patterns in Hungary, or
Well, explain. Well, hold on. First, let's rewind. I need more clarification on the question. Where are you seeing the of counsel patterns?
sorry?
So where do you see that you're seeing it? You said the question said that you're seeing a pattern of counsel
Yeah, in
positions
Hungary.
in Hungary. Okay.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Okay, so it's a different system, and I'll say this. So in the US, right, you have associates and you have partners, and that's really it. Someone that is counsel and of counsel, these are very different things. So counsel is sort of a stepping stone that certain legal structures have in the US. So you have LLPs, which are limited liability partnerships, and you have PLLCs, which are partnerships, limited liability corporations. And then you have different ones, but you can have a counsel position in those firms. And so you'll see that someone is an associate, then they're counsel, and then their partner. Generally, of counsel, right? If someone's title is of counsel, it means that they're not really active in the day-to-day life of the firm. And so if you see that in Hungary, you see of counsel, right? It generally, again, this is just my understanding, it's not someone that is at the office every single day. It's someone that might have their own law firm or own practice, but they want to be associated with another office. And so they're of counsel there, which means that that law firm can call on them, right, if they need help in their area of expertise, and they have already, signed contracts together. So, they don't need to say, oh, hey, here's a contract. They just can call them and they can start doing the work together. Does that answer the question a little bit? I went a little off topic. I'm not great at answering questions. This is why you guys see I'm not very smart. So.
I think so. I think
Okay.
so. You answered it, yeah. And also, one last question. It's about the structure of law firms in the US. So you mentioned there are firms there with, let's say, 1,000 attorneys. But in continental Europe, I don't think you have it, let's say, in Brussels, maybe in London, but that's a different word. So why is it? It is because it's more integrated markets. Let's say a transaction in North Carolina, and between North Carolina and Texas, it's being dealt with in New York, and it's different in Europe. Or what's the reason for that huge law firms?
Well, so part of the thing is, so even like I don't know, let's say Denton's, right? Denton's has an office in Hungary, I think, but Denton's is what, 3,000 lawyers. Now, a good chunk of that is in the US, but they have lawyers in China. They have places all over the world. So it's not all of them are in the US. Wilkie has probably 800 or 900 lawyers or 1,000 lawyers in the US. The rest are probably around the world somewhere. It's a good question. There's something I think about too, which is there was a merger now, I think. Someone helped me with this. Versace and someone else, or Versace got acquired. Can someone tell me who acquired Versace? Anyone? Prada. So interestingly enough, right? So Versace and Prada are not American companies, but their merger was worked on the one side by Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz, which we just talked about as the highest grossing equity per partner equity organization in the world. And then I think Kirkland and Ellis on the other side. So it was two New York-based firms that advised these companies on this acquisition. I think that our legal system and our legal network is developed for these types of transactions. I think that, again, the amount of hours and speed at which US lawyers can work is just, on a different plane, because we don't have a work-life balance. It's not an expectation. And because there's a lot more lawyers. The other thing is that when it comes to profits, right? So your partner, for example, at Wachtell, right? Their hourly rate is going to be $2,500 an hour. And so you want, your law firm and your lawyers, you want your highest grossing, business to be in the US, because it's just accepted that that's how much legal services cost. It's just accepted, the fee structures, and also the corporation, right? So corporate law, mergers, transactions, acquisitions, the stock exchange, right? Going public. It's all such a robust, established system there that I think that's why all this type of work goes to the US, right? So it's hard to answer that question, because I think I would love to see more of that type of work here, and I'd love to see more transactions go through other places, but it's not necessarily the fault of the Hungarian lawyer, right? It's mostly the fault of the Hungarian tax system, the Hungarian legal system, the Hungarian corporation system. It's just not friendly to these things.
Okay. Meanwhile, we received another question. So, a tad off topic, but I'm curious. You shoved your bookmarks for a sec with Upwork on it. Do you do freelance work? Can
No.
you share some insights?
Oh, no. So you know what? Upwork actually. So my bookmarks bar, if you saw it, it's quite old. I also Upwork. I used. When did I use Upwork? When did I use Upwork? So I used Upwork between college and law school a lot. And the reason I did it was because I had a business fixing computers. So that's how I made some extra money. And I lived in sort of like a small apartment, but there were a lot of older folks that lived around me. And so Upwork, I paid someone, $20 to make my website. And then I paid someone like $10 to do email marketing for me. But I don't do any freelance work, no. But Upwork, I still have it on my bookmark bar, along with a lot of other. I mean, I've used, I think, Google Chrome for like, I don't know, since it's been around. So, but good observation. But no, I had a computer repair business, and so that's how I made some
Very
extra
American,
cash.
we'll say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for the presentation and thank you for your answers. And also, thanks for everyone who joined us today. Feel free to join our next event called The Business of Law, Leadership, Innovation, and the Future of Firms. You can find the link in the messages, and please check the website of Hungarian Legal Fest as well, where you're going to find exciting events like this one. Thank you.
I put my email in. If anyone wants to email me, could you send that? That's my email. You can
Sure.
find me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. You want to grab coffee? You have any more questions for me? Again, I'm open book about my life, career, everything else. So thanks, guys, and see you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.